The bat signal has been lit. Go through the grandfather clock, secret entrance, and head back to the Batcave. It's time to revisit the Batman animated series with your hosts, Adam and Nick.
Welcome to another episode of Back to the Batcave, revisiting Batman the Animated Series. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me this week is my co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going?
Doing amazing, man. Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it's always a good day when you're talking Batman. That's a
Can't complain.
foregone conclusion, and to do it with a fellow Batman fan is even better. And no matter what else is going on, when you're talking Batman, it's a good time.
Yep.
And as we've done on this show, when Josh has been with me, we of course are going through Batman the Animated Series in a special order that was curated by a fan of the series, not me or Josh or anybody or Nick or anybody else. I can't take credit for it. I didn't do it, but a fan curated the series in a manner that would have more connected storytelling, cohesive storytelling, much like a primetime live action drama would, and that's how he curated the list. So we decided it'd be cool to kind of do it that way, do something a little different, and so the episodes we're doing today is Nothing to Fear, right? And On Leather Wings, which is a much different order than when On Leather Wings appears in the series. So he almost flipped it completely.
I was gonna say that's a much different order.
Yeah. But as we usually do, before we get to that portion of the show, if there is any news in the Batman world, we tend to cover it. And not surprisingly, there is news regarding the Batman world, and specifically, the Batman world in question is Matt Reeves' Batverse that began with the Batman. Now, Nick, you're well aware that's right. The nice swag that he got from fandom.
Wasn't intentional, by the way.
Apparently, and that's great for U.S. residents, but over here in Canada, like me and our good buddy Carlos, we can't get that because they'll take our box office money, but for the merchandise, no, I don't think so. But anyway, next time if they ever do a fandom, I'm gonna get one of you guys to send me. I'll pay for it, and then you guys can send it over. And
absolutely,
that way. How about that? But anyway, they're gonna turn me into the Riddler now with all this nonsense about not sure.
No, don't do that, Adam. No.
That's a little over.
There you go.
For a hoodie, but so the Batman began Matt Reeves' world, and as we know, he's going to continue it with the next piece of the Batverse puzzle is going to be the HBO Max spin-off series revolving around Colin Farrell's Penguin. That actually begins filming, I believe, in either January or February, to my understanding, which necessitates the production to have to, fill out the cast because it's not just going to be Colin Farrell by himself in an office. He's going to have to interact with people, so they have to fill out the cast, and they've started to announce who is going to comprise this cast, and we've got Kristen Milioti from How I Met Your Mother and Palm Springs joining the cast, and she is going to play Sophia Falcone, which is, of course, the daughter of Carmine Falcone, which would also make her, spoilers if you haven't seen The Batman, Selena Kyle's half-sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nick, what do you think of this casting?
I actually really love this casting. To be quite honest, he was actually in one of my favorite movies. Might be my favorite movie of 2020, Palm Springs. I
Oh,
know she's very highly regarded from How I Met Your Mother. I never watched that show, but I heard she's fantastic in it. I like it because it gives Colin Farrell kind of this romantic kind of side background thing that you can maybe play around with. But I just like that she kind of looks like a fierce version of Sophia Falcone. And I kind of like that you are now expanding the Long Halloween lore that Matt Reeves already teased. So you're really diving into some really, really fun stuff here. You know, you're opening the mob world. Who knows what else you can do now? But I think Sophia Falcone's a really great call, especially for this show. And I think she's going to play up Colin Farrell really, really well, to be quite
yeah,
honest.
and it seems like she's going. I'm assuming she's going to be after Oz because
Mm-hmm.
he is making a play to take over her father's, territory,
Yep.
since he's no longer part of the land of the living. And so that's going to be an interesting dynamic. I I watched How I Met Your Mother in spurts, but it's been so long that I can't say. I mean, she looks familiar, but it's not like I can
Mm-hmm.
pinpoint. Oh yeah, that performance of hers in episode, season 3, episode whatever. I can't do that because it's been so long since I watched
Right.
the show
Yeah.
sporadically. So I really haven't seen her in anything. But I like the fact. I'll tell you what. And this is kind of. I mean, it's a small thing. It's not really that important. You think I'm getting ready to click the pen? That's not what
I
I'm
was gonna
doing.
say, I
Okay,
know you.
I'm not there yet. I need to see her in action before I can start clicking the pen.
Oh my.
But
We need to transition you over to pencils, my man.
well, there'll be a lot of sharpening. I'll tell you that much. Um, but no, I like the fact that they've cast an actress who has based off of her name, Italian background of some sort.
Yeah.
Again, it's trivial. It's a small thing, but they did it with John Turturro, and now they're continuing that with this casting. And I just think it's cool because they're playing Italian characters of Italian background.
Mm-hmm.
Getting actors and actresses that are that is kind of cool. No disrespect to Tom Wilkinson, but I mean that's an English dude playing a
Right.
stereotype of an Italian, right? And it's like
Yeah.
it loses some authenticity there when they do that. And the guy from
Mm-hmm.
Gotham, I don't know what his background was. Maybe it was Italian or not, but it just seemed. It's like again, it felt to me both of those performances like somebody doing a stereotype of an Italian mobster, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
can we get something a little more authentic? And John Turturro definitely give us that. And I think Kristen will continue that, or I'm hopeful that she'll continue that trend
Great.
uh, along the way. So I'm looking forward to it, even though I'm not overly familiar with her body of work.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm willing to bet that Matt Reeves is a part of the casting process. Because he's an executive producer on the show and this is his world. So at this point, based off of the Batman, his casting was on point, for the whole cast. So I'm not going to start questioning or second guessing him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I stand on that. I'm so excited that this show's happening. I can't wait. And I just watched the Batman again. Uh,
Yeah.
Halloween. That was my Halloween movie choice.
It's a great
And it
choice.
gets better every time you watch it. Just
Oh yeah.
it's
I mean,
so
and also to your point, would you really have ever thought that you were really, really excited for a Penguin series? Like,
no,
like
because yeah,
confirmed, like Batman's not in it that we know of right now. And maybe Bruce Wayne makes
I
an
mean Bruce
appearance for
Wayne
like a
might show up,
Penguin show. You
but we'll
know?
see in the shadows. Maybe I could see you
Yeah.
know,
But like it's
just
Penguin, like it's a
yeah,
villain series. I mean, like
yeah,
it's crazy that like we're actually hyped for a
yeah.
solo
It's
villain
it's
series
just
like that.
the portrayal of that Colin Farrell provided was so good.
Yep.
And on top of that, it's not just gonna be Colin Farrell squawking and doing a Burgess Meredith, which was great for the '60s show. But
Right.
I don't know if I could watch a 45 minute to an hour show of a guy basically doing what Burgess Meredith did, as good as that was for that time period. So, but again, it's getting to live more in Matt Reeves' Gotham City. That's the most intriguing part. Of course, and seeing where the Penguin, like that power grab, seeing that Scarface kind of show scenario played out in Gotham City is really appealing.
That sounds awesome.
And apparently, according to the news that we're going to talk about now, we're going to get to spend even more time in Matt Reeves' Gotham City via HBO Max, because Nick, remember there was around the time when the Penguin series was first announced, there was also talk, an announcement of a Gotham Police Department and an Arkham Asylum series. And then it seemed like the Gotham PD show was shelved, and they were going to focus more on the Arkham Asylum show. Well, there's two bits of news. The one bit of news is that apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, the Gotham PD show is still in development, so it's not dead. It hasn't been replaced. They've revived it and are working to redevelop it. But also that the Arkham Asylum series has taken a step forward, and that step forward is the hiring of Antonio Campos as showrunner and director. And his previous credits include the HBO Max series The Staircase and The Sinner, along with indie movies Christine and Simon Killer.
He's also worked with Robert Pattinson before.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But the interesting thing is we got to remember that Campos is replacing Joe Barton, who left the project. I would assume, for whatever reasons, creative differences or what have you. So, what do you think of the idea of the first of all, the Gotham City PD series still being in development, and then what do you think of the hiring of Mr. Campos as the showrunner / director of some of these episodes?
Yeah, I'm gonna break this up into two parts. I love that you brought up the Gotham PD side of all this, because this has been really, really fascinating for me too. Because I remember like way back when the Gotham PD series was announced, they got Terrence Winter to actually be the showrunner at the time to work with Matt Reeves. And if nobody knows of Terrence Winter, he's one of the most renowned HBO showrunners of all time. I mean, The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, all that kind of stuff. The Wire. So to think that he was going to create another cop procedural centered around the Gotham Police Department, it seemed like a no-brainer. And it seemed like a home run for me. So hopefully, I am glad that it's kind of circling back around. And I do hope that kind of develops nicely. As far as the Arkham show, I'm very fascinated with this one, just because I know Matt Reeves described it as it's a haunted house story set in Arkham Asylum. And that kind of sends my mind into all these different places, because there's so many things that you can do with it. You can obviously explore the Martha Wayne side of stuff that they teased heavily in the Batman.
Right.
You can do something with the Joker and the Riddler in there. You can tease all these different villains in the show. You can throw a Jonathan Crane in there. I mean, you can do a Harley Quinzel if you wanted to. There's just so many avenues
as the doctor,
that you could explore
see
there.
more time of her as a
Exactly.
psychiatrist, which would be interesting. And also,
yeah. So it sounds awesome to me.
She may end up on the list, but no, I did. Yeah. No, but I am in agreement with the idea of a haunted house show set in Arkham Asylum. It's like, yes, please, sign me up for that craziness. And again, I just like to see, like, Batman's been in action for 2 years now in the world of Matt Reeves, and we already know the Joker's in there, and now the Riddler's in there. Who else in his first year did he throw in there?
Hmm. That's
Or who else
yeah.
is in there and eventually going to break out and have to be put back in there? Like it's a way, I think,
Mm-hmm.
of fleshing out characters like the Riddler and the Joker, but also bringing in new ones that you could later use in follow-up films, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and also to your point, I think it is going to be a test to see exactly how grounded and fantastical Matt Reeves is going to go, right? Because Christopher Nolan, for all intents and purposes, was very grounded. Just, I mean, in scope and scale and everything, right? So Matt Reeves has a shot where like he's kind of really crafting something so grounded that I'm very curious what this Arkham show is actually really going to do, because there's all these different teases of he wants to create all these other villain spinoffs, like I think there was Clayface.
right. That's another piece of news, which
Yeah, yeah.
when
So
they
we'll
talk
probably get into
about,
that. Yeah.
right, yeah, we'll get into that in a second. But the idea of the Arkham show is definitely intriguing, and now with the showrunner that they've hired, it sounds like they've picked a guy that um, is potentially perfectly suited for this.
Yep.
And so, but like I said, I think that would be an interesting way to um, maybe delve into a little bit of the Martha Wayne backstory of it all. That could be done in flashbacks, or the opening scene of the pilot maybe shows starts out when Martha was a kid and then flashes forward,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But so there's a lot of avenues that it could go. But again, it's like it's the idea of being able to live in this Gotham City and being able to breathe and expand that world. Whereas, and this is the intriguing part for me is, you know, every other iteration of the Batman film franchise, you get to spend 2 to 2 hours and 45 minutes roughly in Gotham City, in that iteration of Gotham City, whether it be Tim Burton's, whether it be Joel Schumacher's, whether it be Chris Nolan, or now,
Mm-hmm.
as of the Batman, Matt Reeves. But now we're getting to spend a much longer time and really get an idea of the city feeling like a real place. And I'm not talking about realism, but the longer you spend in a place, the more like as an audience member, you feel absorbed in it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Feels
it
lived in.
becomes tangible, more real. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm so intrigued by that because we've never gotten that with the Batman film franchise before. It's been little stops in Gotham City, and then it's like, okay, here Batman doing his thing, and then credits roll, and you go home and you wait 3 years for the next install, right? So, but like this, it just builds and builds and builds, and you get to like breathe it in, and just take
Mm-hmm.
it all in. So that's what has me stoked, right? I
Yep.
want to see how deranged and crazy this place is, and
Absolutely.
um, and then as you alluded to, is anybody getting tired of Matt Reeves' Gotham and Batman World? I'm not, and most people aren't, because there's potential for even more of it. Because roughly around the time when James Gunn and Peter Safran were announced as the DC Studios CEOs, which we've covered on this podcast network with Donnie and with Chris. It was also announced that the Batverse was going to expand further because Matt Reeves was in discussions or like early planning stages on other projects, both for film and for streaming, set around the world of the Batman, specifically some of his villains, and some of the names tossed around in the Hollywood Reporter article were Professor Pig, which is an interesting one. That guy creeps me out. And so if that came about, that would be really creepy. There was Clayface. Scarecrow was another one, which would feed right into the Arkham series quite well. And was there a fourth one as well?
I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So yeah, so and it's not a guarantee that just because those three were mentioned, that those are going to be the three that actually end up being on screen. Like during the development process, the roster could, or the lineup could change. But as of right now, that's what we're hearing. So what do you think on that?
So obviously some old, some new, and some really familiar, I guess, is the takeaway with that. But again, like to my last point, it's going to be interesting to see how fantastical he goes. I thought Christopher Nolan did something pretty fascinating with the Scarecrow in his trilogy.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what Matt Reeves does.
The most fantastical of the villains that he gave us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it doesn't mean all of these will get made. Maybe one of them gets made. Maybe all of them do. But it's just a testament of building out the world, building out the Rogues Gallery, and just offering something different that we haven't seen before. Because I'm operating under the impression that the Batman 2 is at least 3-4 years away. So why not give us all these different shows? In the meantime, keep the Batman in the public eye.
Yeah,
and then build your universe as you go.
Basically, what we've kind of learned, again, from that James Gunn article, that's the gift that kept on giving, apparently.
Right.
But, it said that the Batman 2 likely wouldn't come until 2025.
Right.
Which most of us have kind of put that together. Like, there are still some people that are operating in La La Land saying, well, the sequel's not coming. Like, there's still people trying to convince that the Batman wasn't successful, and it's like, okay, they signed Matt Reeves to an overall deal. They've got what now? What did we just say? 3 spin-off shows?
Yeah,
right.
Roughly, yeah.
And a sequel. I don't know what certain people quantify as success, but last night, and again, I'm not an insider in Hollywood. Like, I'm not a producer. I don't know how these things work, but just general observation. I don't think the green light spin-off series and sequels to stuff that aren't successful.
Right.
Like, I don't know. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen didn't get a sequel. So I wonder why. So that notion that, it's not coming. It hasn't been greenlit. I'm like, huh? What world? What universe are you on? Bizarro world, obviously. That movie hasn't been greenlit yet. Like, I don't understand. So if anybody reads these articles and still thinks that the Batman 2 isn't coming, I've got news for you. The world is not flat. See a psychiatrist, because clearly there is something wrong with you. Learn how to read. Hooked on Phonics is a great tool. It's good. I suggest using it, because clearly there's a sequel on the way. But anyway, that's all the news that we have in terms of the Batman and his ever-expanding universe via Matt Reeves. We have, and don't forget, they're still shopping the animated Cape Crusader, which is co-produced by Matt Reeves. And of course, we're going to cover it on this channel when that gets going. So as all this stuff starts to, as we get more news, as it starts to come to fruition, you can bet that it's going to be covered on this network. And I'm ready to consume it all. And let's go. And it's a good time to be a Batman fan.
Always.
And based on the news lately, it seems like it's going to be a really good time to be a DC fan overall. Come real soon here. So this network is going to be all over it. I'm sure you guys on your end, when you're not here with me, you're going to be all over it with Nico and Mr. C. So there's going to be a lot of coverage across the board on these wonderful projects. So
about time.
let's go. Let's get all the popcorn and let's Let's consume. I'm ready.
Amen.
But until then, we're going to be, of course, continuing our journey through Batman the Animated Series. And we're going to do that after the break. And so stay tuned. We will be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we are continuing our watch through of Batman the Animated Series in this fan curated order that I stumbled across online way back when. And so when Josh was last with me, the next two episodes we had in the queue were Nothing to Fear and On Leather Wings. So Nick, that's what you and I are going to discuss today. So give us a little bit of just a brief kind of summary of Nothing to Fear.
Yeah, so Nothing to Fear is actually the introduction to Scarecrow, believe it or not. And this was, might I add, a rather frightening design to see at a young age. I just thought he looked kind of like scary. Like,
he looked like Freddy Krueger kind of.
Yeah, like a Freddy Krueger kind of like. So just his overall look, I thought was pretty scary, even as a little kid. Kind of still is today in a way too. How they've kind of evolved that design throughout the series, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, the episode is essentially Batman's first encounter with the Scarecrow and the fear toxin, and Batman's, I guess, first real internal mental struggle within himself and how he kind of overcomes, this idea of fear. So I think it was a pretty solid introduction, actually. Some pretty scary stuff in here too, actually.
Yeah. I really like the way they introduced Scarecrow in the sense that clearly he was trying to hit the university that he felt wronged him, where it would hurt them the most, their pocketbook, right? And that's what was wrong with the university. But we meet Scarecrow and he's already Scarecrow. Like, we're thrown into this Scarecrow attack, but then throughout the course of the episode, we get a flashback where he tells one of his goons basically his origin story. And that, he, as a child, he was obsessed with fear. He liked to torment both fellow children and animals. Very creepy. Again, for a kids show, this went into territory that was like, another kid experimenting on or tormenting animals and kids. I don't know. The same Looney Tunes, folks. And then we talk about how he became a professor of psychology, specializing in fear and trauma, and then when he got his position of power, would do tests on students because that's how insanity, I guess, flows. And so I like that flashback aspect of it. I thought it made it feel like it was something of a live action show, whereas, like, I don't recall back then watching cartoons or animated series, however you want to call it, and seeing many flashbacks. Like, it wasn't really, of the cartoons that I watched, it wasn't necessarily a thing. So seeing that, I don't know, it adds a different layer to the proceedings. If that makes any sense.
What did
you think of his origin? What did you think of his origin?
It did an interesting part where it's like, it's not every episode of the animated series needed this 22-minute backstory on the villain, but I think they did it with the Riddler too, where it's like you can slowly weave in, the villain here. They're already established. I like that. All you really need is a flashback And then the Scarecrow one is even more interesting because I think, unlike the Riddler, I think you can feel a little sympathy for that episode. Whereas this one, he's kind of just a creepy like psychopath who you just want Batman to like take down.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's kind of all there is to that one.
yeah. There's no. Um, I don't feel any sympathy at all for Scarecrow.
If you do, I would question you.
Like the minute I found out, oh, wait a minute, he's tormenting fellow children when he was a kid and animals. I'm like, all right, this guy is
Ouch.
beyond beyond saving.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the fact that you know even before uh, Batman is confronted by the Scarecrow, he's dealing with a bit of self doubt because the lead professor at the university sees him in the elevator
Mm.
and says, you know, your father and I used to go to the school together, and he would be ashamed of what you've done to the legacy of his name. And he's saying, basically, he calls up Bruce Wayne for being nothing but a playboy, billionaire, and um, so that kind of hits home for Bruce, and that's weighing on his mind as he's going through this encounter with Scarecrow.
Mm.
And at the first encounter, the first couple of encounters actually, he loses. Like Batman is not successful.
Mm-hmm.
Scarecrow gets the upper hand, which is very interesting to see. Um, of all the episodes that so far I've covered on this show, I think this is the most failure that Batman's experienced up to this point.
Mm.
Um, he gets doused with the fear toxin for the first time, and when the fire breaks out in the bank vault, through the fire, he sees the face of his father and hears the voice. It's saying, you're a failure. You failed, right? And so um, he's dealing with that, and so Alfred. It's funny because he makes his way home to Wayne Manor, and Alfred basically has to sort of nurse him back to health, if you will. And he explains to Alfred what happened, and he's like, I'm starting to wonder if those visions were right, and I have failed my parents. And Alfred basically says that's nonsense, because he goes, your father would be proud of you, and I know that because I'm proud of you. And I liked it. It was a little, and Bruce puts his hand on the shoulder and says thank you. It was a little moment, a very very small moment, but it was very powerful and touching because it shows that yes, Alfred is more than just the butler. He is, in fact, a father figure, even in this show, a familiar figure to Bruce Wayne. And that little quote, I think, made a big impact. So, what did you think of? So Batman failing
Mm-hmm.
for the first encounter, but also the idea that we get a perception from others in Gotham through the Doctor that Bruce Wayne is nothing more than this, playboy and nightlife, jet setting, money spending. Because it's not like it's overtly on display, but it's subtle, but it's there. So, what did you think of those aspects?
Mm. Yeah, I like the idea that because this is still early on in Batman's career, where like we're kind of used to seeing him not have the answer to everything, and because our love of Batman is like, well, Batman always has the answer, like Batman always figures it out. So I like this idea that it's a mental struggle early on in his career. It's the idea of Scarecrow using his fear that he conquered against him. It's kind of flipping on him in a little bit. And I totally like the decision to kind of use Bruce Wayne's parents and how he views them and how society views them as kind of a way to Bruce kind of self-reflect and see if, what he's still doing, like the Batman, is making a difference, whether it's still early on in his life and his career. So I like, because I don't think we really had that kind of question in any medium prior to that point, where it's like we've always known where the Waynes were just squeaky clean people that just happened to get shot in an alley, and Bruce Wayne became an orphan and he ended up becoming Batman, right? There wasn't this, Bruce Wayne was this, esteemed man that got them idolized, and like you're just not living up to his name, right? Like there was none of that.
Right.
So I like that the animated series attempted to take up all the risk and made Bruce Wayne realize that, what am I doing? What am I really doing? So, and I like that scene that you brought up too in the Batcave with Alfred, where you kind of see that he kind of has a little peach fuzz growing too, because he's not himself. And then it's when Alfred kind of, nurses him back to health, like you said, is when he realizes that he's Batman. And then we get that final encounter with the Scarecrow. He overcomes it, and we get that iconic line that I am the night, I am Batman, I am vengeance. That line. Still gives you chills, and Conroy still pulls it
when
off.
I heard it again today, I was like, watching this morning, I was like, oh, here it comes.
Oh, so good, so good.
So basically, I'm guessing that over the course of Matt Reeves' Batman films, like Batman in the first one says, "I'm vengeance." So in the second one, he's gonna say, "I am the night," and then by the time the third one rolls around, he's probably gonna say, "I'm Batman." That's my guess of how it's gonna play out. That would be pretty funny. It'd play out like that.
That would be awesome.
One part of the line per episode of the trilogy, but no.
Be pretty ironic if he said in a Scarecrow counter.
Yeah, that would be the final. Yeah, but before we get to the final battle, we'll talk about that a bit. Alluded to, but in that first encounter, one thing that Batman did come away with was a piece of the mask, which then he was able to analyze, and with his own kind of detective skills coupled with the back computer, was able to discover that it was Jonathan Crane. And I like that because it shows the detective aspect of Batman. Like as soon as he saw, when the back computer fed out, okay, these are the companies that manufacture that chemical. Batman was the one that was like, okay, now I need to cross-reference that with employees of the university, because he put two and two together of this guy is attacking the universities and specifically their funding. So it's got to be somebody that has an axe to grind with the university. So you get a mix of Batman's tech via the back computer helping him, but also his own ingenuity as the detective aspect coming through. And I like that. I like that a lot. Because up until the animated series, we got a little bit of it in Batman and Batman Returns, but it wasn't fully formed detective work. But we're seeing it here in the series, and I liked it. So that was nice to see. The other thing that I noticed in the final sort of battle, the third act battle, man, that thing was destructive. Like the blimp is going through buildings. It's like, where is this? I got Man of Steel vibes happening. No, I'm not saying that because I love Man of Steel, but I just see things going in buildings, and it's like, wait,
Power Rangers
what
too.
is going on here? Like, but my question, it was like, who's going to clean this up? But no, but the only reconciling thing that I kind of, and again, this is the negative of kind of watching it in a post Nolan world, because when you're watching the blimp like demolish a building, you're like, were there people in there? Like all of a sudden you want an explanation of what were there people. But I'm guessing because it was so late at night that those particular buildings were empty, is my guess.
You would think.
I would hope, because otherwise. But no, it was just I never noticed how destructive that third act was before. So rewatching it now.
I mean, the thing's on flames. Buildings are on flames.
Yeah, it's chaos everywhere. But again, Batman is again hit with the fear gas, but he overcomes it, and he says that classic line,
Mm-hmm.
and is able to, Scarecrow gets away, but Batman's able to track him to sort of his chemical plant where he's got all the chemicals, and Batman had turned on one of the faucets that is emitting the gas, so Crane gets exposed to it, and then as he's backing away, he smashes, he bumps into Batman, and he turns around, and Batman, extends his cape, and Scarecrow sees a giant bat, which
Mm-hmm.
visually, animation wise, looked really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looked like something out of the Gargoyle series. I don't know if you noticed that. But,
Yeah, I know. I noticed the same thing. Yep.
But the other thing that I noticed was two influences. With a giant bat face, before you see Batman as a giant bat, that alluded to me Batman Forever. The cutscene where he's in the cave and he's face to face with the giant bat.
Yep.
And the other thing it alluded to was Batman Begins, when Scarecrow's doused with his own fear toxin, and he sees Batman as a demon kind of creature.
Taste your own medicine, doctor.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I'm gonna place I'm betting that Goyer was probably inspired by this episode.
Sure.
Batman Begins. I'm not gonna say Nolan was, because he probably didn't watch Batman the Animated Series. So, but Goyer is somebody that I could see watching it back.
Agreed.
So yeah, those are things I noticed. So, any thoughts on that final battle on your end?
No, just you can pick up an interesting point. Is that everybody wants to see the blimps in live action. I'm not too sure about that now.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be a good, especially if we're going to have people complaining about destruction afterwards.
Yeah. Oh my.
But all right, is there anything else we missed that you think we should mention, or?
No, I just think that it's a solid introduction to Scarecrow, and like I said, I believe his look kind of evolves throughout the series, and this was a pretty scary one, to say the least. And I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg with this character.
Yeah, and not the iceberg lounge, because that's Penguin, but
that's later.
Yeah, that's later. But before we move on to the next episode, let's rate this one. So give it a grade, a letter grade for this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one. Let's see, we go out of 5 here. Is that what we do?
I forgot what we used to do on this particular show.
I'll go. You know what? I'll go 4 out of 5. I'll go 4 bats out of 5.
That's good. Yeah.
There you go.
Right. So yeah. All right. So 4 batarangs. Let's do this.
Yeah, we're 4 batarangs.
4 batarangs out of 5. I'm gonna do 4.5 batarangs out of 5.
Okay.
I thought this was a fantastic episode. I know this is only a 22-minute series. They packed a lot into 22 minutes, including Scarecrow's origin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so good that I wanted more of this episode. I wish this thing was an hour. So
Me
to
too.
flesh it out more. But yeah, it was a really strong episode. So it's 4.5 for me and a 4 for Nick. So, all right, Nick, let's talk about the next episode, which is On Leather Wings. So, what do you got there?
Coincidentally enough, did you know that the air date of this episode was September 6th, 1992? The reason I know that is because it is on the collector's edition of Batman animated series by Columbia Pictures, Adam. Show and tell for the episode.
That's way back.
Back.
That's before.
There is this is volume 1, believe it or not. I believe there was 22. I have all of them.
That's before the complete DVD set, right?
It was. So I got sent one of those every week every month. I believe it was once a month when I was a little kid. That's kind of how I saw the series. So
wow. Now, did you update it since to like the Blu-ray version?
I don't have the Blu-ray version. I just have the box sets, the standard DVD box sets, and then the collector's edition. I'm thinking about it. I hear it's a really good remaster.
Yeah, I'm I'm
I
teetering.
know.
I'm teetering.
It's like one of those like you own it already, so do you really need, but
Yeah, that's the internal discussion I'm having with myself.
yeah.
So,
So,
but yeah, all right. So
yeah.
On Leather Wings, give us a brief synopsis of On Leather Wings.
Yeah, so Leather Wings, and spoiler, this is actually one of my favorite episodes of the series. It's the introduction to Man Bat. So the infamous Man Bat that everybody is clamoring to see in live action. This is where it all began, where this idea of one of our first actually encounters with the police mistaking Batman committing a crime that he obviously didn't commit.
Right.
And then we get this introduction to Kirk Langstrom. And then we get this real kind of detective story of Batman figuring out this creature terrorizing Gotham City. Harvey Bullock is after the Batman. No surprise to anybody. This kind of drives the wedge even further between him and Commissioner Gordon. And then it's just a really cool story and a detective story about Batman figuring out who Man-Bat is and what he is. And it's a really fascinating tale how they all bring it together in 22 minutes. There's like one twist, but you kind of see it coming. But then they do the classic of like, oh, well, this guy's Man-Bat. But
Yeah,
nah, I think this
what's
guy's
funny is
Man-Bat.
the twist
You
doesn't
know,
work like on a rewatch
it
because
doesn't.
we've seen it so many times. It's like it's not a twist anymore,
Yeah.
but it was intended. At first viewing, it was a twist, but
Yeah. Right.
So what I find interesting about this is this, despite the fact that on the DVD on the collected edition, this is the first episode. In this reorder that we're doing, it's the second to last episode before the season finale.
Yep.
And so, but in spite of that change, it still works because Bullock has always been, from when I started doing it in this order, and now he's always been anti-Batman, whereas Gordon is not. So the fact that this comes so late in this rewatch order, it didn't affect it because that was consistently played out throughout the course of so far, and done quite well. What I like about this episode as well is, if I thought the last episode showcased Batman as a detective, this one was like the Batman in the sense that, hey, Batman is detective mode 100% here. Like he's got complete with infrared goggles that he puts on and I like the fact that he's collecting evidence from the scene of the crime. Like it's something, again, so obvious if you want to tell a detective story, but it's like, it's such a revelation to see him actually doing it, because it's up until the Batman, it's been so few and far between, right?
Yeah, it was so cool.
So I like that aspect. The fact that Bruce Wayne is also like the excuse that he gives is that he's got a bat infestation, which is really funny coming from the guy that everybody in the audience knows as Batman. It's kind of ironic. The excuse is that he's using his bat infestation. So I like that. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then another thing that I noticed about, specifically with Kirk Langstrom, is it's very much a play on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yep.
In the dynamic, in the way of the two personas, right, of Man-Bat and Kirk Langstrom. So what did you think of all that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the Jekyll and Hyde comparison too. I even came up with like Dracula, because he kind of has like that look of Dracula to him too in a little bit.
Yeah, with the
so that's interesting too. And you know what? It's like that weird thing of he come across as just like your standard guy / doctor, but there's kind of a little bit of an edge to him. Like he's not so welcoming, but he's like friendly enough where he can play the part a little bit. to make Bruce Wayne think about like, oh, like no, nothing's going on here, everything's fine.
Right.
You know, and then it is like that classic kind of villain, or I was always the villain all along approach to the whole thing. But yeah, I thought like he certainly looked like he can be the villain all along. And then when he transformed into Man-Bat, that was some pretty horrifying stuff. I'm sure you felt the same way. Again, for a kids show, they didn't hold back into the transformation whatsoever.
Yeah, specifically the body horror aspect of it. Like when you see him changing, like as a kid, I'm sure that probably disturbed me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh my god, that's so cool. But you know, back
Right.
then it's like, gee, what the hell? And you know what I liked about what I found interesting is that the Man-Bat persona was kind of taking over even when Kirk Langstrom was in human form, right? It's like the serum was driving Kirk Langstrom to insanity almost. And by the way, if we've learned anything from 2020 to 2022, don't do any crazy experiments with bats. It's not good. It doesn't end well. And this was kind of the foreshadowing, 20 some odd years, 92, 02, 30 some odd years earlier, they were telling you, this show is like, leave the bats alone. Like let them be. Don't.
And this is why biology and anatomy class are much different now.
Don't start drinking vials with bat, whatever you got going in there. Leave it alone for the good of everybody.
If it's red, don't touch it. If it's orange, don't touch it.
Let it go. And it also kind of, in terms of the transformation, I guess it's kind of a Warner Brothers connection, but it reminded me of the Looney Tunes when I can't remember which character. I don't know if it was Sylvester or Daffy, or they did a play on the Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. I think it was Sylvester. It might have been Sylvester.
I think it was Sylvester.
Yeah, but the way they did the transformation, it was kind of like there were nods to it. I found in the animation, so I kind of dug that. I also, what I really had a laugh with, I thought it was hilarious, was when Batman's back in the cave analyzing the sounds. Alfred's reading the paper and is like, wasn't, I gotta find out who this is. The police thinks it's me, but that's not our perpetrator. And it's like, and Alfred comes down and is like, you mean to tell me you're not the one beating security guards up to a pulp at night? Like, just the casual dryness of it all was really funny.
And then the call he gets too.
Yeah. And also, when he does get that call in the Batcave and he has to switch to Bruce Wayne mode, that's where you hear the voice change.
Yep.
Like that's where it becomes extra. I mean, it's evident anyway, but it's really evident here because 1 second it's Batman voice, the next is Bruce Wayne voice, and the only time it's gonna sound weird for me to say this, but that scene reminded me of, there's a scene in Batman 66, the series, where I think it's the Joker. He wants money. He's holding something for ransom. So the commissioner's like tells Batman, "Oh, don't worry, we'll just contact Bruce Wayne and see if he'll put up the front money to think." So they call Batman on the red phone, and they call Bruce Wayne on the regular phone. And Adam West is doing this thing where he's got the red phone in one hand and the regular phone in another, and he's going back and forth between the two personas. And there's an ever so slight inflection in his voice where 1 second he's Batman and the next he's Bruce Wayne. And that was done here. By the way, you want to see a tour de force of acting from Adam West? It's that scene right there. It's on YouTube. If you don't have Batman 66 on DVD or Blu-ray, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, don't worry, it's on YouTube. But so that was a great bit of acting by Adam West, just to shout that out. But also, I thought that was a nod to it in this episode with Kevin Conroy, and I think he off wonderfully. So I love that moment in both 66 and in this episode. Um, and then the really cool thing for me was just the third act action, seeing Batman really for the first time in this series handle something that is fantastical slash borderline supernatural. Like
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of this order, and I know you're just jumping on late or going into the second season, but the beauty of this episode order is there's an escalation of crime boss, slightly crazy with the Joker, and now we've gone to full supernatural horror kind of stuff. And so there has been a progression in this order, and I think he's done that on purpose. So you could really see it here. Like there has been the build. So the placement of this episode makes sense in the way he's done it. So kudos to him. But what did you think of the third act, seeing Batman versus Man-Bat?
Mm. It's man, that Man-Bat scream, that roar, still gets me to this day. It was interesting seeing him essentially struggle the entire time. I mean, my God, the third act is him just hanging on to Man-Bat's legs for dear life, right? And then
Yeah,
he
and then he's
finally
punching in the head at some point.
punches him in the head, and like that kind of like made me twitch a little bit too, because like the way like they show his head like diving into the wall is like, my goodness. I was like, if that was any other person, he'd be dead. But yeah, no, and like I said, it was a pretty interesting third act too, especially to kind of see like Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Bullock's faces when they see Man-Bat and then Batman kind of fighting along the way, and then Commissioner Gordon throws it in Harvey Bullock's face, which I thought was awesome. It's like, you see, do you see it now? Batman's not bad. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought the subtle ending too of, he brings Kirk Langstrom back to his wife and kind of gives him like that, not really like a hero's welcome, but kind of like he does the right thing, and he still brings it back to his wife.
He's always trying to rehabilitate
Exactly.
his villains, right?
Yep.
And in this case, this particular episode, he's able to give him a serum that Batman says has gotten the effects of the Man-Bat formula out of him completely. So presumably, according to this episode, they've taken Man-Bat off the board. But it was a very it was a twofold moment, because it's very heroic for Batman the way he brought him in. Like it was kind of empathetic the way he was carrying him, much kind of like in the Batman when he was holding that girl's hand as she's getting strapped to the gurney. It's kind of in the same vein, but so I like that ending. It's very heroic, but it's also tragic because it's the guy spent the majority of the episode trying to kill you, right? And here you are. It just shows, I think, the fortitude that Batman has to want to help all these people, even if they're the crazies, or the craziest of the crazies.
Right.
And I really love, one thing I want to say before we do our final grade is, you can tell that this episode was intended to be the first by the amount of heavy use of the Elfman/Walker theme. Like, they plugged that in every friggin' chance they got, because they wanted the audience, which at that point was 4 to 10-year-olds.
Oh yeah.
To be like, remember that Batman movie you liked, or those two at that point? This
it was Returns by that point.
Of that, like they were trying to hammer that. Even the way they glorify, those long looks at the Batmobile, those long shots, and it's like,
oh yeah,
they're trying to tell you that, hey, this is basically the world of '89 and Returns, the spiritual third movie, if you will. But I just noticed how often they played the theme, and I'll never complain because I love that theme. So
right. It's iconic.
It's not a complaint. It's just I just noticed it a lot more in this episode than the other ones. So yeah. Anything else you want to specifically bring up that we haven't?
No, I just thought that this was again, like I said off the top, it's one of my favorite episodes of Batman animated series just because of like it does its job so well. You know, it establishes the detective roots of Batman. It gives a really, really cool, fascinating character in Man Bat. Everybody wants to see him in live action. I think it would be cool if we can find a way to do that. Not sure how, but I think it would be a fascinating tale to tell, especially like, you know, if Marvel can do a Werewolf by Night series. I think you can certainly do something with Man Bat, maybe something down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, very, very cool episode, and I think it holds up really, really well for me actually.
Right. I for the most part, I 100% agree. Yeah. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and do our rating.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one 5 batarangs out of 5, Adam. Really love this one. How
All right.
about you?
I'm gonna go 4 batarangs out
Okay.
of 5. And the only reason why, I get what they were trying to do at the ending, but I kind of don't like that they took Man Bat off the board. Like that they gave him
Yeah.
this full on cure. Because what I like about his appearances in the comics is there's always that struggle of Batman wanting to cure him, and then there's moments where Kirk Langstrom is present even in Man Bat form,
Mm,
and that adds a different dynamic to the proceedings.
that's a
So I
good
would have
point.
liked to see that in this as well, but the way they left it off, he's taken off the board.
Nice.
So that's really the only uh, drawback that I can come up with. But otherwise, uh, spectacular. Animation was top tier. The music was phenomenal. So it all just works. And yeah, no, no matter how many times I revisit the series, it's just so good. So yeah, this was a fun episode with you, and also before this point, the first season uh,
Hmm.
was awesome to revisit. Now, what we're going to do, according to the release order, is the next thing that we have on deck um, is in between season 1 and 2 is Batman: Mask of the Phantasm.
Ooh.
So, um,
That'll be a good one.
so that, and let me just double check that is the next, because I don't want to talk um, out of school here, um,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure. Let's
I
see.
mean, that's one of my favorite Batman mediums. Anything. So if that's the case, we're gonna have a really, really great,
Yeah, I've got the list right
really
here. So
great conversation with that one for
I've got the
sure.
list. I've got the
Everyone
list.
should get excited for that one.
Not that list, but I've got the list here.
Yeah.
Uh, and yes, I'm correct. It is the season finale of season 1 is Mask of the Phantasm. So
Buckle up.
that will be our next episode on this particular show. Um, so be ready if you want to. If you're following along with us, that's the next thing that you need to watch. That's homework, and when that's homework, that's the best kind of homework you're ever going to get. I wish somebody would have given me that homework as a kid.
All right.
But in the meantime, before we get together and talk about that, Nick, if people want to track you down and talk Batman with you,
Hmm.
do that.
Yeah, and of course, first things first, Adam. You know, watching Batman animated series is really not homework if you really
Right.
think about it. You know, it's not really, homework, But yeah, if you guys want to follow me on social media, you guys can do so on Twitter and TikTok at Nick Zenick. I'm also on Letterboxd at Zeddy Films. But most importantly, I'm notable for hosting the Vigilante 1939 podcast with two of my lifelong childhood friends, Nico and his father, Nick Russo Jr. So go give that podcast a listen. It's available anywhere you find your podcast at. Thank you,
Indeed.
sir.
Definitely check those out. Those guys are great. They put on a great show.
We
I pop
try.
up every once in a while and say hello and so. But it's a fun show, And
Thank
they've
you.
got a great dynamic, so check it out.
Thank you.
And then if you want to find me, it's at Adam_Leafsfan on Twitter. The podcast network also has its own handle, which is at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook group, which is listed in the description below. Click that, and I will add you there. And if you want to continue the conversation there, we most certainly can. But until next time, remember that Batman, the animated series, is forever. From the first time you hear Kevin Conroy utter that iconic line to the last. So long, everybody.